You know, Montana winter doesn't just get cold, it bites. It's the kind of cold that turns breath to smoke and makes you question every decision you've ever made. That's where I was, Elias Vance, 36, single dad, night shift mechanic at Sterling Dynamics. My whole life was about keeping machines alive and my daughter, Clara, safe. I lived by a simple code: do the right thing even when nobody's watching. My truck was a battered Ford pickup with 200,000 miles on it, but it was reliable. I was focused on getting home to Clara, whose latest wind turbine model was sitting on our kitchen table. She's 7, obsessed with engineering, and she has this phrase she writes under her drawings: warm beats storm. She was my reason for everything. In a glass tower 3 states away lived Sterling Audrey, CEO of Sterling Dynamics. 34, sharp, cold, and a firm believer that numbers didn't lie. She flew into Montana in secret, her mission known only to her inner circle: identify where to cut 11% of the night shift to please the board. My name was on line 17 of that termination list. That night, the blizzard hit Highway 2 like divine wrath. Visibility dropped to arm's length. Every instinct screamed at me to keep driving, get home, get safe. But my foot found the brake pedal instead. I saw the hazard lights first, a weak pulse of amber in the whiteout. Audrey's rented SUV was at a 45-degree angle, crumpled like aluminum foil. I grabbed my pry bar, wedged it into the doorframe, and felt the metal groan and give. Inside, a woman was slumped against the airbag, blood trickling from a cut. I cut her seatbelt, pulled her out, wrapped her in my red flannel coat, the one Clara picked out because it looks like fire, Daddy, and lifted her in my arms. The abandoned hunting cabin was 200 yards off the highway. I kicked the door open, laid her by the stone fireplace, and worked fast, starting a fire with dry alcohol tablets. Within 10 minutes, heat was pushing back the cold. She stirred. Her first instinct was control. She checked for her phone, her bag, her files. None of that was here. Just firelight and a stranger. Your name? She rasped. Elias. I'm Audrey. She didn't offer a last name. That simple omission changed everything, and nothing. I noticed her wrist was swelling, the joint at an angle that made me wince. I found a piece of kindling and old blanket strips, and fashioned a splint, the kind of improvisation that came from years of making broken things work. My hands, rough and calloused, were gentle, and I noticed her watching them more than my face. You have someone waiting for you? I asked, poking the fire. She almost laughed. No. My daughter, I said, the pride unmistakable. She's 7. Obsessed with wind turbines. Says she's going to power the whole valley someday. I saw something crack inside her chest, just a hairline fracture. When was the last time someone had spoken to her about dreams instead of deliverables? She turned her face toward the fire, hiding whatever expression had escaped her control. We were stranded. She hated the loss of control, hated depending on a stranger. In my world, she said, efficiency determines who stays. I poked the fire, sent sparks spiraling upward. In my world, everyone deserves to get home. The words hung between us, simple and devastating. She wore cold calculations like armor, but here, watching me tend a fire to keep her alive, the armor felt thin. The next morning, search and rescue loaded Audrey into their vehicle. She kept my red flannel coat close, couldn't quite bring herself to return it yet. As she drove away, she didn't know my last name, or that I was the mechanic who would be facing termination tomorrow. For a few hours, she'd just been Audrey, and I'd just been Elias. And that simplicity felt like something precious we'd both lost long ago. I made it to the plant just before my shift started, pulled on my work coveralls, and headed to the floor. Whatever corporate theater was about to unfold, I had equipment to maintain. Then the door to conference room B opened. Audrey Sterling walked in, wearing a burgundy business suit, severe bun, eyes like winter ice. The room stood. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Her gaze swept the assembled faces, detached and professional, until it landed on mine. For half a heartbeat, something flickered: shock, recognition, panic. Then it was gone, replaced by the mask she wore like a second skin. Clinton Morris, the COO, launched into his presentation, spreadsheets projected on the wall, showing labor costs in angry red. The night shift, he explained with clinical precision, is where inefficiency lives. The document flashed too quickly for most to read, but I caught my own name scrolling past. Headcount reduction targets. My stomach went cold. My manager, Otis Palmer, pushed back. You cut maintenance. You're gambling with safety. This equipment is 40 years old. It needs experienced eyes. Equipment has diagnostic systems, Clinton countered smoothly. We can't justify legacy staffing. Audrey sat at the head of the table. Her bandaged wrist was hidden, but she felt the phantom pressure of my hands, making a splint from scraps. Her pen hovered over the words "cut night maintenance." Nobody noticed her hesitate. Nobody noticed her cross it out. The inspection tour began. I was assigned to assist. When she asked about maintenance intervals, I cited the manual from memory. Then we reached Sector 7 where a coolant line was weeping fluid. 3 weeks old, still pending vendor approval. I grabbed a spare compression clamp, sealed the leak in 20 minutes. Why didn't you call the vendor? She asked. Because we could fix it ourselves in 20 minutes, I replied. Saved about $2,400 and 3 days of downtime. Clinton appeared instantly. He improvised.
Vi passa proper procurament.
Audrey turned to me. Write up your method. Include safety verification. On my desk by end of shift. She was testing me. I wrote it by hand, clear block letters, every step documented with precision. My phone rang during the write-up, Clara's teacher. My daughter had won the school science fair, first place for her recycled materials turbine. Pride flooded through me. Audrey was close enough to see my face transform. For a second, the ice in her expression melted. Then she rebuilt it, brick by brick. CEOs didn't get distracted by employees' personal victories, but she'd seen it. And she couldn't unsee it. We had a gas line in the casting sector that had been problematic for weeks. Pressure sensors throwing intermittent warnings. Clinton had approved budget sensors that lied 2% of the time. At 2:15 p.m., the sensor reported all clear. But the old, analog pressure gauge told a different story. And I heard it. That particular pitch that meant pressure building where it shouldn't. I hit the emergency stop. Pulled the alarm. Clinton's voice exploded through the radio. Who authorized that shutdown? Valve C7 critical. I shouted back. The explosion wasn't large, just a pressure release, white smoke billowing, but it was enough to destroy equipment worth $600,000. More importantly, it was enough to kill 12 people working in that space. I grabbed a soaked blanket and ran toward the smoke. Through the haze, I saw Audrey frozen in the observation corridor, staring at the flames with the blank expression of someone watching their cold theories incinerate in real time. I reached her, wrapped the blanket around us both, pulled her toward the exit. My arm seared where a spark caught me, but I didn't let go. In the medical bay, Audrey's hand shook as she poured water for my burn. Why do you keep saving me? She asked. I looked at her directly. Because you're a person. Something in her carefully constructed worldview cracked wide open. All her theories about efficiency, about who deserved what, they scattered like ash in the wind. This man, this night shift mechanic who should have been fired, had just risked his life for hers, without hesitation. The emergency board meeting convened within the hour. Henry Blake led the prosecution. Unauthorized shutdown. False alarm. Estimated losses exceed $90,000 in delayed production. Clinton had his narrative ready. This is exactly the kind of reactive, non-protocol behavior that makes night maintenance a liability. The machinery of termination was grinding forward. Audrey sat at the conference table, staring at her bandaged wrist, thinking about the cabin, about hands making splints from scraps. I need 48 hours, she said, her voice steady. Safety investigation. Full review before any personnel action. She was learning to speak their language, risk management, liability mitigation, while meaning something entirely different. That night, my resignation letter, 2 sentences on plant stationery, was on her desk. I won't let anyone sacrifice their principles for my sake. I walked out. Audrey and Otis Palmer spent 16 hours in the maintenance records room pulling files that hadn't been opened in months. The safety valve logs told a story. They found that Clinton Morris had approved budget sensors over engineering recommendations, saved $42,000 on equipment, and buried the clear objections. The smoking gun was Valve C7 itself, 3 years past safe operational life. My maintenance notes had flagged it. My recommendation had died on Clinton's desk, marked non-critical. Audrey drove to my address, a trailer park on the edge of town. My little girl, Clara, answered the door. This tiny person with serious eyes, holding a drawing, the familiar fireplace and those 3 words, warm beat storm. Are you my dad's boss? Clara asked. I am, Audrey said. Clara held out the drawing. He says, warm always wins, even when the storm is really, really big. Audrey took the drawing, knelt down to Clara's level. Your dad is right. He's very right. I appeared behind my daughter, started to close the door, but Audrey spoke first. I need you to come back. Not to your old job. To lead the emergency systems restoration. Full protocol review. You write the new standards. I'm not interested in being anyone's token redemption. I shook my head. This isn't redemption, Audrey said. It's recognition. The plant needs someone who sees problems before sensors do. Someone who will hit the alarm even when it costs 6 figures. Someone who understands that numbers don't bleed. I stayed. Over the next 36 hours, I worked with a handpicked team. We replaced valve C7, recalibrated the entire sensor array, and wrote new standard operating procedures that assumed competence rather than compliance. The production line restarted clean. My solution was 63% less than Clinton's budget projections. The math was undeniable. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Audrey stood at the head of the table, a laptop, a stack of logs, and absolutely nothing left to lose. She walked them through the video footage of the near miss, the sensor data, the email trail showing how cost-cutting had created the crisis. The failure, she said, her voice steady and clear, was in leadership, in choosing metrics over safety, in valuing efficiency over wisdom. Clinton Morris sat silent, his carefully constructed narrative collapsing. The board's liability exposure was clear. Clinton Morris approved substandard equipment and suppressed engineering recommendations. That ends today. The vote was unanimous. Clinton was suspended. Vendor contracts were under review. Audrey stood before the board with a new proposal. I'm creating a new position, night shift engineering supervisor. Not based on credentials, but on demonstrated expertise and judgment under pressure. I'm appointing Liam Carter. He doesn't have the degree, one board member objected. He has something better, Audrey replied. He has the courage to stop the machine when the machine is wrong. 3 months later, the Montana plant celebrated 90 consecutive days without safety incidents. A record. Audrey established a private STEM scholarship fund for local kids. No press release, no logo, just money that let dreams become engineering degrees. On a Friday evening, I grilled burgers in the trailer park common area. Audrey sat on a picnic bench wearing jeans and my red flannel coat. First time I felt warm for the right reasons, she said quietly, watching the fire dance in the portable grill. I handed her a burger. Storms still come, but we've got fire now. She looked at Clara's laminated drawing, the fireplace still glowing in crayon orange. Warm beat storm. She thought about the person she'd been in that cabin, stripped of title, just someone who needed saving. She thought about the person she was becoming, someone who understood that the strongest structures were built on trust, not spreadsheets. We sat together as spring began pushing back winter. 2 people who'd been forced together by a blizzard, bound together by a fire, and who learned that the ultimate efficiency wasn't found in cutting costs, but in valuing the wisdom of the people who worked the floor. The fire that had kept us alive had become the fire that gathered people close, that turned strangers into something like home. The fire that wins. So, here's my question for you. What are the metrics in your life, your job, your relationships, that are making you ignore the obvious safety warnings? And what simple wisdom from someone invisible do you need to start listening to? Comment below and tell me your thoughts. And tell me, do you think Audrey was right to risk her entire career by shutting down production to protect an employee? Or should she have followed corporate protocol? Let's talk about the hard choices between data and wisdom. Like and subscribe for more stories about invisible heroes and second chances.